The desert wind cut across the Nevada sand, carrying dust devils through the training compound at Nellis Air Force Base. The range hummed with activity, rifle bolts snapping, targets clanging, the low chatter of 24 airmen who hadn't yet learned when silence mattered. Through that noise walked Staff Sergeant Alexis Carter, lean and composed. Her sleeves rolled to her elbows despite the heat. On her left forearm, clearly visible, was a tattoo. 3 sets of numbers in precise military font. 36 degrees 16.99 degrees north, 115 degrees 13.98 degrees west. The whispers started before she reached the firing line. Probably coordinates to her favorite Starbucks, one airman joked. Or the nail salon where she gets those perfect brows. Another added, loud enough for the group to laugh. Even a few instructors smirked behind their sunglasses, the kind of casual mockery that passes quickly but cuts deep. Carter said nothing. She adjusted her rifle sling, brushed sand from her sleeve, and kept walking. Behind her mirrored lenses, the range stretched endlessly. Targets lined like ghosts awaiting judgment. Her eyes stayed steady. No anger, just the stillness of someone who'd been tested before, far from home, and already knew exactly who she was. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we reveal how one woman transformed mockery into reverence through a moment no one saw coming, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. This story proves that the quietest voices often carry the heaviest truths. Staff Sergeant Alexis Carter didn't look like the kind of legend whispered about in classified briefings. She looked like a tired instructor on another long-range day at Nellis. Her uniform was the same desert tan as everyone else's, seams faded by sand and sun. The only things that stood out were her posture and her eyes. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd operated in places where one mistake meant death, and her gaze never wandered. It measured, calculated, understood. At 32, Alex was older than most of the candidates training under her. Blonde hair always pulled back in a regulation bun. Blue eyes that could read wind and threat with equal precision. Athletic build that spoke of years maintaining combat readiness. She'd been a joint terminal attack controller in Afghanistan, directing airstrikes in mountain valleys where communications failed and enemies closed from every direction. Her call sign back then had been Valkyrie 2-1, a name that meant nothing to the young airmen around her. Now, to them, she was just another Air Force sergeant with a clipboard and a mysterious tattoo. The coordinates tattooed on her left forearm drew more attention than her instructor badge. Black ink, precise numbers in military GPS format. No explanation, no context, just coordinates that meant nothing to anyone who hadn't earned the right to ask. When she rolled her sleeves for weapons maintenance, the numbers flashed like a code nobody cared enough to solve. "Hey, Sarge!" Technical Sergeant Marcus Webb called out, nudging the airmen beside him. "Those coordinates on your arm, they point to anything interesting or just decoration?" Webb was younger, confident, with the easy swagger of someone who'd never been truly tested. He didn't think of himself as disrespectful. To him, it was just range banter, the kind that made long training days bearable. He'd never learned what real silence sounded like. Up in the observation tower, Colonel David Stone watched the exchange with mild curiosity. Air Force Special Operations Command, early 40s, jaw like carved granite. He'd arrived 3 days earlier to oversee a joint training evaluation between combat controllers and tactical air control party candidates. He'd expected a grizzled master sergeant or a seasoned warrant officer running the range. Instead, he'd been introduced to Staff Sergeant Alexis Carter, a staff sergeant leading SOCOM evaluation week. Stone hadn't questioned it in the briefing, but the doubt sat in his mind like sand in his boots. Down on the range, Carter walked the firing line with measured steps. She checked weapon positions, sight pictures, breathing rhythm. Her hands moved efficiently, adjusting a bipod here, correcting a cheek weld there. She didn't waste words. When something was wrong, she fixed it. When something was right, she moved on. "Sergeant," Stone called from the tower. "How's the wind reading?" She glanced up briefly, shifting left to right, gusting to 12 knots. "I've briefed them." Her voice was quiet, but carried authority. Stone nodded slowly, still testing her. Near the center line, a young airman fumbled with his magazine. Carter watched, arms folded. She waited, letting him struggle long enough to feel it, but not long enough to panic. When his first 3 shots went wide, snickers started. Webb shook his head. "If he shoots any wider, he'll hit the parking lot." Carter knelt beside the airman. "Grip, breath, trigger." She adjusted his hand, rolled his shoulder forward. "Feel your heartbeat. Shoot between beats." He sighted again. Squeezed. The shot cracked clean. Steel rang loud. Pause. Silence when expectations shatter. Then, lucky shot. Even a broken clock. Webb's laugh sounded hollow. Carter rose, moved on without comment. From the tower, Stone leaned forward. He'd been watching through a spotting scope out of habit. Now he adjusted focus, tracking Carter as she moved along the line. Her corrections were minimal but surgical. Every adjustment improved performance. "Interesting," he murmured. Behind him, Captain Sarah Mitchell stood with arms crossed, watching the same scene. Mitchell wore the rank of a company commander, but the way she'd greeted Carter that morning hadn't been standard protocol. It had been quieter, almost protective. Stone had noticed. "You know her?" Stone asked casually. Mitchell's expression tightened briefly. "Well enough. She knows what she's doing." Stone waited for elaboration. None came. The answer wasn't evasive. It was a shield. Down below, Webb couldn't let it go. As Carter passed behind his position, he raised his voice. "Hey, Sergeant, those coordinates ever point to anything real, or just there to look mysterious?" Laughter rippled through the group. Someone else chimed in. "Maybe it's where she got her last manicure. Those nails are too perfect for real field work." Carter's stride didn't falter. She kept walking, eyes forward. The only sign she'd heard was a brief, almost unconscious touch of her fingers to the tattoo, as if confirming it was still there. Captain Mitchell's jaw clenched. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Carter had survived far worse than careless jokes on a safe range, but something knotted in Mitchell's chest watching it happen. The rest of the afternoon played out in familiar rhythm. Shots fired, targets hit or missed, commands given, laughter rising and falling like wind over dunes. Through it all, Carter's presence remained constant, a steady line drawn through chaos. She moved with patience that didn't demand, and authority that didn't announce itself. Every correction was precise. Every unsafe act was stopped instantly. Most saw just an instructor doing her job. They didn't see how her eyes tracked every wind flag, every heat mirage, every small detail that could turn a training day deadly in real combat. They didn't know those coordinates weren't decoration. They marked the exact spot where her best friend had died, calling in airstrikes to save their team. They didn't know her call sign, not yet. By late afternoon, heat shimmer turned the distant targets into wavering ghosts. Colonel Stone stood at the base of the tower, voice carrying across the range. "You can observe from up here, Sergeant. Let the candidates run their own lanes." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a dismissal wrapped in courtesy. Carter's expression didn't change. "Yes, sir." She climbed the narrow stairs to the observation deck. From there, she could see everything. Shooter position, wind indicators, the faint mirage bending air near steel targets 800 meters out. She lifted her binoculars, noting each candidate's form, and began offering quiet corrections over the radio. "Shooter 4, adjust 2 clicks right. Shooter 7, hold 1 mil high for wind." No one responded. Down below, rifles thundered. Dust rose. Steel targets stayed silent. Stone leaned against the rail, pretending not to notice. He keyed his own radio, voice casual, almost mocking. "We'll handle it, Sergeant. You just keep watching." The next volley scattered wide. She keyed her mic again. "Wind's increasing. Read your flags. Mirage is pulling targets left." Silence answered. The only sounds were rifle cracks and mounting frustration. By the time shadows stretched long across the range, not one target past 600 meters had been touched. Webb finally slammed his rifle down. "Maybe next time we let the tattoo girl shoot instead." The line erupted in laughter. Not joyful, but relieved. The kind that hides embarrassment behind noise. Even Stone's mouth quirked slightly. Up in the tower, Carter exhaled slowly. She set the binoculars down, removed her cap, ran fingers through her blonde hair pulled back tight. Then she descended the tower stairs. The range quieted as her boots hit gravel. She didn't speak, didn't look at anyone, just walked through settling dust until she reached Webb's rifle lying in the sand. Without a word, she picked it up, checked the chamber, shouldered it, and sighted downrange. The world seemed to hold its breath. One squeeze. A single crack split the silence. 800 meters away, steel sang, a deep, clear ring that echoed off distant hills. Heads turned. Even the wind seemed to pause. Carter set the rifle down gently beside Webb and looked at him once, steady, expressionless. Then she turned and walked toward the equipment shed. The laughter didn't return. Stone's jaw tightened. Pride stung. "Lucky shot," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. Carter didn't break stride. "Wind doesn't do luck, sir." The line froze, half awe, half shame. When she reached the shed, she began cleaning the rifle like nothing had happened. Every movement calm, mechanical, precise. The others returned to their positions, but now, between shots, they glanced her way. Stone watched her through narrowed eyes. There was no arrogance in her posture, no satisfaction, just focus. That unnerved him more than any display of ego could have. As darkness settled, range lights flickered on. Targets began ringing now, not from luck, but from applying the corrections she'd given hours earlier. Yet not one man acknowledged it aloud. That night in the dining facility, Webb's group played old photos of women in military history on a laptop. Soviet snipers, Israeli soldiers. At a back table, Carter sat alone eating. Captain Mitchell passed with coffee, stopped. "You good, Sergeant?" Carter nodded. "I've seen worse, ma'am." Mitchell walked away. The laptop cycled photos. Then one froze everyone. Woman in desert camouflage, radio pressed to ear, calling coordinates while explosions lit background. The jawline, the blue eyes. It was her. Silence. Then the next photo replaced it. Carter finished eating, walked out into the night. Above, stars punched holes in Nevada sky. Thunder cracked across the desert. Rare rain lashed the compound. Inside the armory, emergency lights cast yellow shadows. Carter sat disassembling a weapon. Stone stood near display cases. Then he saw it. Narrow case under dust. Brass nameplate. Helmand Province. Valkyrie. 2-1. His hand froze. That call sign. He'd heard it during joint operations in Afghanistan. A JTAC who'd held a valley under fire for 6 hours, directing strikes that saved an entire company. He turned. Carter was backlit by emergency lights. You ever serve overseas, Sergeant? Once or twice? Ever hear of Valkyrie 2-1? Can't say I have, sir. She reassembled the rifle, racked it. Power flickered, plunging them into darkness. When lights returned, Carter was walking out into rain. The next morning, Carter passed between trainees. Captain Mitchell came from command building. When she saw Carter, she stopped, straightened, saluted. Morning, Sergeant. Carter nodded. Morning, ma'am. Webb blinked. Did she just salute a staff sergeant? Mitchell answered without turning. Some people earn respect in ways that don't fit rank charts. From that moment, a shift began. Mockery lost its edge. That afternoon, during rain, Carter stood at the memorial wall, hand against cold stone, fingers tracing. Captain James Rivera. Stone stopped when he saw her. The coordinates on her arm matched where Rivera had died. She turned, caught him watching. Neither spoke. She walked away. Behind her, whispers started. Not cruel now, but curious. Afghanistan, Helmand, JTAC, Valkyrie. By evening, even Webb had stopped joking. Stone caught Mitchell outside after dark. That folder last night. Valkyrie 2-1. It's hers, isn't it? Mitchell didn't deny. She just looked toward distant range lights. You wanted to know who she is. You're starting to find out. Before walking away, she added quietly, be careful how you dig. Some stories are too heavy to carry twice. That night, lights in Carter's quarters stayed on long after others went dark. Inside, she sat at a desk, a folded photo in her hand. Two people in desert camouflage, smiling despite dust and exhaustion. One was her. The other was Rivera. She ran her thumb across the coordinates written on the back, the exact spot where he died saving their entire team. Outside, whispers grew into questions, and questions grew into quiet respect. No one mocked the tattoo anymore. They just wanted to know what it meant and who exactly the woman they'd laughed at really was. The storm returned with dark clouds and electric air. On the schedule, live fire combat simulation. Stone considered canceling but decided, we run it. Weather doesn't wait. Carter checked equipment. Safety on. Confirm lanes. If visibility drops, cease fire. The simulation began. Moving targets. Smoke. Recorded gunfire. Rain started. Then lightning struck close. One trainee froze. Dropped to his knees. Incoming. Incoming. Radios erupted. Stone tried coordinating, but the storm didn't care. Wind drove rain. Another lightning bolt. A trainee flinched, swinging his muzzle right. An instructor grabbed the barrel. In seconds, control frayed. Stone's attention jumped between crises. The simulation had become dangerously real. Carter watched it happen. She stepped into rain, lifted her radio. All stations, cease fire. Safety's on. Muzzles down. Instructors confirm. There was authority forged under fire. One by one. Lane 1 safe. Lane 2 safe. Gunfire stopped. Courseman to lane 5. Everyone else hold position. Stone turned to look. He'd never heard her speak that way. This wasn't Instructor Carter. This was someone who directed real combat. She reached the panicking trainee, dropped to one knee. You're at Nellis. Training. No incoming. Look at me. She took his wrist. Count my fingers. One breath each. You're here. Not there. Gradually, wildness eased. When the corpsman arrived, she helped transfer him, then scanned the line. All lanes safe. Copy. Instructors. Guide shooters off. Range is cold. No confusion. No one questioned who commanded. Stone watched, headset forgotten. This was what Mitchell had hinted at. This was why a captain saluted a staff sergeant. Once trainees cleared, Carter checked the roster. One missing. Where's Johnson? He was in lane 9, an instructor said. She scanned groups. He's not here. He left his position. I'm going. Stone stepped in. We'll send a team. By the time you organize one, he could be anywhere. He's got combat history. Lightning plus gunfire plus trauma equals bad math. I know how they think. Stone hesitated, nodded. Go. She grabbed a radio, stepped into storm. From the tower, Stone lifted binoculars. Rain obscured everything. She moved low and fast between cover. At the second berm, she found him. Johnson huddled against earth, helmet off, eyes shut, hands over ears. Carter circled, coming into view slowly. Johnson, it's Sergeant Carter. You're at Nellis. Look at me. He flinched, blinked. Listen, no fire, just rain. That's now. I need you here. He swallowed, nodded. She grabbed his harness, pulled him up. Together they moved back. By staging, his breathing steadied. Carter handed him to the corpsman. airman. No one applauded, they just watched. Later in the gear room, Carter peeled off her soaked top. She rolled up a sleeve. Webb saw them, faint pale scars, shrapnel marks. That's combat wounds? He asked quietly. She glanced at her arm. Old business. Focus on your rifle. His swagger gone. Around the room, respect moved in quietly. They didn't know her full story, but they understood. Whatever those coordinates marked wasn't decoration. It was survival. 2 days later, clouds cleared. Air hummed sharp over the desert course. Last day of evaluation. Everyone felt it. Pressure before the final shot. Carter stood in the tower, headset on. Range is hot. Begin sequence. Below, Stone led shooters through a course testing precision under fatigue, moving targets across open ground. At the far end, a convoy idled. Beside it stood General Marcus Hayes, arriving without warning that morning. Silver stars caught sunlight. The entire range had straightened when he arrived. Hayes said little, just folded arms and watched. Round after round cracked through dry air. Steel rang in uneven rhythm. When Stone's turn came, he stepped forward confidently, his rifle custom-tuned, stance practiced. He wanted this to be the final impression. Proof seals still set standards. Shooter 1, ready. Copy, Carter replied. Target sequence 4, on your mark. He drew breath, lined up, squeezed. The rifle jammed. Sharp click. No recoil. He blinked, tried clearing it. Bolt wouldn't move. Sand fouled the action. Other shooters glanced. Hayes' eyes narrowed. Stone's pulse spiked. Reputation, control, image, slipping in seconds. In the tower, Carter was already moving. She dropped the headset, vaulted downstairs, crossed the range. Dust swirled. Trainees stepped back as she passed. When she reached Stone, she knelt. May I, sir? He hesitated, nodded, stepped aside. Carter pulled the bolt free in one motion, tapped it clean, reseated it with a precise click. She checked the chamber, shouldered the weapon, sighted the moving target. For the first time all week, she removed her cap. Blonde hair caught wind. Light struck her face full on. Sharp features, focused blue eyes. The calm of someone who'd done this where it mattered. She fired once. Steel 800 meters out rang pure and clean. General Hayes froze. His hand dropped. Eyes locked on her. The words came out barely above a whisper. Valkyrie 2-1. The name rippled across the range like a shockwave. Stone turned sharply. Trainees glanced at each other, confused. Hayes stepped forward slowly, face pale. You held the valley in Helmand. You called strikes for 6 hours while your team extracted under fire. Every sound died. Wind stopped. The steel's echo faded into complete silence. Carter lowered the rifle, breathing steady. For a moment, no one moved. Then Stone, who'd spent the week doubting her, finally understood why the folder, the respect from Mitchell, the quiet authority, all carried the same ghostly call sign. Valkyrie 2-1 wasn't a legend. She was standing right in front of him. No music, no applause. Just the flag snapping once in afternoon wind as every person on that range stood frozen, eyes on the woman they'd mocked. The controller who'd survived when others didn't. The ghost who'd walked out of Helmand and into their training range as if it were nothing. In that silence, every joke, every doubt, every careless word collapsed to dust. Hayes stepped forward first, silver stars flashing as he came to attention. Then, in front of everyone, he raised his hand in salute. It wasn't ceremonial, it was real. Stone blinked, stunned, then followed. One by one, others joined. Webb, the same man who'd joked about her tattoo, standing rigid now, hand trembling as he saluted. No one spoke, just the quiet rhythm of breathing and rifles cooling in afternoon heat. Hayes lowered his hand but didn't step back. You all laughed at that tattoo. But those coordinates mark where Captain Rivera died, calling the strike that saved 40 men. Because Valkyrie 2-1 didn't stop when the radios failed and everyone else was running. The men standing there didn't know how to react. Some looked down, others stared as if seeing her for the first time. Hayes' tone softened. Remember that next time you think quiet means weak. The strongest voices aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the ones still calling coordinates after everyone else has gone silent. Carter looked away, uncomfortable with praise. Fingers brushed the rifle stock, grounding herself. Let's finish the course. Hayes smiled faintly, nodded. The line reset. Targets rotated. Each shooter stepped forward under her instruction now. Wind left to right. Gusting 12, Carter called. Hold half mil high. Every voice answered in unison. Copy. Not one correction ignored. Not one command questioned. Every movement followed her rhythm. Quiet, efficient, accurate, precise. When the final target fell, Carter gave the order to clear weapons. Men gathered gear in silence, posture sharper. They'd walked onto this range mocking a tattoo and walked off knowing it marked a battlefield they could never imagine surviving. As they dismissed, Hayes approached one last time. "You taught them more than marksmanship." She nodded, eyes on horizon. "I taught them to listen." Behind her, Stone stood with Webb. Neither spoke. Both straightened their backs a little more, like invisible weight had settled on shoulders, the kind that changes how you wear a uniform forever. As sun dipped behind mountains, boot sounds faded. Not the uneasy silence of mockery, but the earned quiet of respect. Dusk settled over Nellis, painting sky in gold and deep blue. The storm-scarred range was quiet. Wind whispered through torn flags. Smell of gun oil hung in air. A small formation stood near the command tent. No music, no cameras, just soldiers beneath a sky that had seen enough. General Hayes stepped forward, commendation in hand, for exceptional leadership under pressure and for reminding us what quiet strength looks like. Staff Sergeant Alexis Carter. Applause rose softly, respectfully. Carter stepped forward in the same faded uniform she'd trained in. The ribbon caught dying light as Hayes handed it to her. She nodded thanks, then slipped it into her pocket instead of pinning it. Hayes smiled slightly. "You've never been one for display." "Never needed to be, sir." When the gathering broke, Stone waited until others drifted away. "You could have told us who you were." She met his eyes without tension. "Would it have changed how you listen?" He had no answer, just nodded once sharply. Webb approached, face pale. "Sergeant," his voice faltered. "We were out of line. I was out of line." Carter studied him, then nodded faintly. "Learn from it. That's what the job's for." He nodded, unable to meet her eyes, stepped back. As evening deepened, base lights flickered on. Others headed for chow. Carter stayed. The range stretched empty before her. She walked to the firing line, the one place she'd always felt steady. She paused by the flagpole. Wind lifted her hood's edge as she raised a hand to the tattoo on her forearm. The ink was still dark, still sharp, but it no longer felt heavy. Not a scar, not grief, memory. Coordinates not of loss, but survival. Respect isn't demanded with words or rank. It's earned quietly in how you carry what you've survived. Some marks aren't decoration. They're history written on skin, remembered in silence. In every uniform are stories you'll never see. Battles fought long before the laughter. Scars hidden beneath sleeves. Memories carried in silence. Staff Sergeant Alexis Carter never asked for recognition. She didn't speak of medals, missions, or ghosts that followed her home. She showed up, did the work, reminded everyone that courage doesn't need announcement. Real strength isn't loud, it's steady. It's the quiet decision to stand when no one's watching, to lead when others doubt, to keep walking long after noise fades. Have you ever judged someone before knowing their story? What would you do if you discovered the person you mocked was a hero? Drop your thoughts below. If this story proved that true strength speaks softly, hit that like button and subscribe to Secrets Never Told. Share this with someone who needs to remember that the deepest scars often hide beneath the quietest surfaces.